My name is Maya Chen. I'm 29, and I just spent $4,500 on what was supposed to be my dream housewarming party in my beautiful new home in Seattle's Queen and neighborhood. I called Dad, practically vibrating with excitement about my latest promotion to senior architect and the celebration I'd planned for this weekend. His response? "Oh, sweetheart, about that party. You're going to have to cancel it. Jessica and her family need to move into your place immediately." My older sister had always been the golden child, but this time they'd crossed a line I never thought they would. Families are supposed to celebrate each other's successes, not sabotage them. Little did they know what I had planned for them. Growing up in Bellevue, a suburb of Seattle, I learned early that the Chin family had a very clear hierarchy. Jessica, my older sister by 5 years, was the artistic free spirit who could do no wrong. She was beautiful, charismatic, and had our parents wrapped around her finger from day one. David, my younger brother by 2 years, was the baby who needed constant protection and guidance. And me? I was the practical middle child, expected to be responsible, self-sufficient, and always ready to clean up everyone else's messes. Our comfortable 4-bedroom home became the stage for countless instances of favoritism that shaped who I became. I still remember my 17th birthday when my parents had promised to help me buy a used car for college, just like they'd done for Jessica. When the time came, Mom sheepishly explained they'd use the money to fund Jessica's latest art project instead. You understand, right? You're so responsible with money anyway, and Jessica's work is really taking off. Meanwhile, 3 years later, David got not just a car, but a brand new Toyota because safety standards have improved so much since Maya was learning to drive. Jessica had always been the dreamer, the one who painted beautiful landscapes and spoke passionately about following her artistic vision. In high school, she was the star of every drama production, the girl everyone wanted to be friends with. Her grades were mediocre at best, but teachers adored her because she could charm her way out of any situation with her infectious laugh and creative excuses. When she barely graduated and decided to attend community college for art, my parents celebrated like she'd gotten into Harvard. Meanwhile, I graduated as valedictorian, earned a full scholarship to the University of Washington for architecture, and received a lukewarm, "We always knew you'd do well," from my parents. The pattern continued throughout our 20s. Jessica bounced between various artistic pursuits: painting, photography, jewelry making, pottery, never sticking with anything long enough to build a sustainable career. She'd have a gallery showing here, sell a few pieces there, but mostly relied on our parents' financial support and her part-time job at a coffee shop. At 25, she married Marcus, a struggling musician who believed they were both destined for greatness. Their wedding was an elaborate bohemian affair that my parents funded entirely, complete with live musicians, organic catering, and a venue overlooking Puget Sound. 2 children followed quickly: Luna, now 6, and River, 4. Jessica embraced motherhood with the same artistic flair she brought to everything else, homeschooling the kids and raising them with what she called creative freedom, but what looked more like chaos to my organized mind. Marcus continued to chase his musical dreams, playing gigs at local bars while Jessica sold handmade jewelry at farmers markets to supplement their income. While Jessica was building her unconventional family, I was methodically constructing my career. After graduating summa cum laude with my architecture degree, I started at Henderson and Associates as a junior designer, working 70-hour weeks and living in a tiny studio apartment to save money. Every promotion came through dedication, innovative designs, and a reputation for delivering projects on time and under budget. I specialized in sustainable residential design, creating homes that were both beautiful and environmentally responsible. 4 years ago, at 25, I finally saved enough for a down payment on my dream property, a stunning 1920s craftsman house in Queen, and with original hardwood floors, built-in bookshelves, and a view of Elliott Bay that took my breath away every morning. The house needed work, the kitchen was outdated, the bathrooms needed renovation, and the basement was unfinished, but I could see its potential. I spent every weekend and evening for 2 years carefully restoring it, learning to tile, refinish wood, and even rewire electrical outlets. My parents visited once during the renovation, spending most of the time talking about how Jessica's latest art series was really finding its voice, while I proudly showed them the crown molding I'd spent weeks restoring. It was Diana and Ryan, colleagues who'd become my closest friends, who truly celebrated my achievements. They'd helped me paint rooms, held flashlights while I installed fixtures, and brought pizza during those long renovation weekends. Diana, a senior architect at our firm, had become a mentor, while Ryan from our engineering team had collaborated with me on several award-winning projects. When I finally completed the renovation last year, they threw me a surprise party to celebrate, recognizing the incredible transformation I'd achieved. When Jessica and Marcus's financial situation began deteriorating 2 years ago, it wasn't surprising to anyone except perhaps my parents. Marcus's band had disbanded after creative differences, and Jessica's jewelry sales had dwindled as the artisan market became oversaturated. They'd been late on rent multiple times, surviving on loans from my parents and Marcus's part-time job at a music store. The final crisis came when their landlord decided not to renew their lease, citing multiple late payments and noise complaints from neighbors about Marcus practicing drums at inappropriate hours. Through it all, I continued advancing in my career. 6 months ago, after leading the design team for a groundbreaking eco-friendly residential complex that won several architectural awards, I was promoted to senior architect. The promotion came with a significant salary increase, my own design team, and the respect I'd worked so hard to earn. For the first time, I felt like my professional life reflected my capabilities and dedication. The housewarming party was meant to celebrate not just my beautiful home, but this professional milestone. I'd planned everything meticulously, catering from Seattle's best farm-to-table restaurant, a sommelier to pair wines with each course, and understated but elegant decorations that would showcase my home's architectural features. I'd invited colleagues, friends, and yes, even my family, wanting to share this moment of triumph. As I excitedly told Diana about the plans over lunch, she raised her glass in a toast to Maya finally getting the recognition she deserves. If only my family felt the same way. The phone call that shattered everything came on a Wednesday evening in November. I was reviewing blueprints for our latest project when Dad's name lit up my phone screen. "Hey, Dad," I answered, eager to share some exciting news about a potential client meeting. "Maya, sweetheart," he began, his voice carrying that overly gentle tone I'd learned to recognize as a prelude to bad news. "How's everything going with the house?" "Great. Did you get my text about the promotion celebration? I'm officially senior architect now, and the housewarming party is—" Yes, that's wonderful, dear. Very impressive." The dismissal was polite but clear. "Listen, I'm calling about Jessica. She and Marcus have hit a rough patch financially, and their lease isn't being renewed." My stomach tightened. Oh no. Have they looked into other rentals? The market's competitive, but there are options if they're flexible on location. Dad's sigh was heavy. That's the problem. With their credit situation and Marcus's income being so unpredictable, landlords aren't exactly lining up to rent to them. Your mother and I would take them in, but you know our place doesn't have room for 4 people, and with your mother's hip surgery coming up? The implication hung in the air like a storm cloud. I knew where this was headed, but I couldn't quite believe it. "Your house has all that space," he continued. 3 bedrooms upstairs, plus that finished basement room. And you're always so busy with work anyway. It just makes sense temporarily until they get back on their feet. I gripped the phone tighter. "Dad, I have the housewarming party this weekend. I've put deposits down, invited colleagues." "Oh, about that," he interrupted. "You're going to have to cancel it. Jessica and Marcus need to move in this weekend. Their current place, well, the situation has become urgent. Not would you consider, or could they possibly, but a simple statement of fact, as though my home and my celebration were already his to dispose of." "Dad, that's not going to work," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This house barely accommodates me and my home office, let alone 4 additional people. Besides, this party is important for my career. Family comes first, Maya." He cut in, his voice taking on that familiar disappointed tone. "Jessica and Marcus need support right now, and those children need stability. Surely your party can wait." The conversation spiraled downward from there, ending with Dad insisting we have a family meeting at their house Sunday morning to work out the details. I hung up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. That Sunday, I drove to my parents' house with a knot of dread in my stomach. The familiar scent of Mom's famous cinnamon rolls filled the air, a manipulation tactic I now recognized. Comfort food to soften my resistance. Jessica was already there, looking appropriately fragile with dark circles under her eyes, while Marcus sat nearby tuning his guitar as if this were a casual social visit. "Maya's here," Mom announced, emerging from the kitchen with flour on her apron. "Let's eat first, then we can all talk." Breakfast was a masterclass in emotional manipulation. Mom kept mentioning how thin Jessica looked and how stressful this situation was for the children. Dad asked surface-level questions about my work while serving Jessica thirds of everything. David, who'd driven over from his apartment in Capitol Hill, kept shooting me meaningful looks every time Jessica mentioned the challenges of finding affordable family housing in Seattle. After breakfast, we gathered in the living room for what Mom called our family discussion, but what quickly became clear was meant to be my surrender ceremony. "It's just temporary," Jessica assured me, her artistic hands gesturing expressively. "Just until Marcus and I figure out our next steps. Maybe 3 months, for at most." "Where would everyone sleep?" I asked, trying to approach this practically. "I have 2 spare bedrooms, but that's still 4 people in a house designed for 1. Luna and River can share the smaller bedroom," Mom jumped in. "They're used to sharing space. Jessica and Marcus can take the larger room, and you have that beautiful master suite." "And my home office?" I needed that space for client meetings, design work, and the quiet concentration my job required. Marcus spoke up for the first time. "You could work at the dining table, or better yet, stay at the office more. You're always there anyway, right?" I took a deep breath. "Look, I understand you're in a difficult situation, but my house isn't the solution. I've worked incredibly hard for my space, and I need it for my career. I'm happy to help you find something affordable. Maybe even help with a security deposit." "Typical Maya," David interrupted, rolling his eyes. "Always about the career and the money. Some things are more important." "That's not fair," I protested, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. "I've earned everything I have. I'm offering to help, just not by sacrificing my home and my celebration." Dad finally spoke up, his voice carrying that quiet authority that had shaped my childhood. "Maya, it's just for a little while. Jessica and Marcus have nowhere else to go, and those children need stability. What about a short-term rental?" I suggested desperately. "Or an extended stay hotel until you can find something permanent." Mom scoffed. "On what budget? Jessica's jewelry sales are slow right now, and with Marcus between musical projects. So, I'm supposed to upend my life because they haven't figured out how to support themselves?" The words escaped before I could stop them. The room went silent. Jessica's face crumpled in a display of hurt that seemed perfectly timed. "I can't believe you'd be so cruel," she whispered. "After everything we've been through, I thought family meant something to you." Mom stood up, her expression thunderous. "That's enough, Maya. I didn't raise you to be so selfish. Your sister needs you, and those children need a roof over their heads." Dad nodded gravely. "We're all family here. We support each other." David glared at me with a mixture of disappointment and disbelief. In that moment, I realized I was completely outnumbered and outmaneuvered. If I continued to refuse, I'd be cast as the villain in the family narrative, the successful daughter who abandoned her struggling sister and innocent niece and nephew. Against every instinct, I reluctantly agreed to a temporary arrangement with explicit conditions. Jessica and Marcus would actively search for their own place immediately, respect my work schedule and need for quiet, and be out by February 1st at the latest. As I drove home that night, the weight of what I'd agreed to settled on my shoulders like a concrete blanket. I'd have to cancel the party I'd been planning for months, reorganize my carefully curated space, and somehow maintain my sanity with 4 additional people in my sanctuary. Little did I know how quickly temporary would transform into something entirely different. The morning Jessica's family moved in was absolute chaos. What I'd expected to be a few suitcases and some toys turned out to be a moving truck's worth of possessions. Boxes labeled Marcus's recording equipment and kids' art supplies suggested a stay far longer than the promised few months. "Where should I put this?" Marcus asked, hefting a large amplifier. I stared at him. "You brought your entire music setup?" He shrugged as if it was obvious. "I can't just stop making music. This could be the perfect opportunity to really focus on my songwriting without worrying about disturbing neighbors." Swallowing my growing frustration, I showed them around my carefully designed space. "Luna and River, you'll share the blue bedroom. Jessica and Marcus, the green room is yours. Please be respectful of my things, especially in my office. I have important client calls and need absolute quiet during work hours." Jessica nodded absently while the kids immediately began exploring my house like it was their personal playground. River, the 4-year-old, pressed his chocolate-covered hands against my newly cleaned windows, leaving sticky prints on glass that had been spotless that morning. "River, sweetie, please don't touch the windows," I said gently. "Don't be so uptight, Maya," Jessica chided with a laugh. "He's just excited about the view of the water." By evening, my pristine home looked like it had been hit by a tornado. Toys scattered across my hardwood floors, dishes piled in the sink, and somehow crayon marks had appeared on my carefully painted dining room wall. I retreated to my bedroom, the only space still under my control, and called Diana to explain why I had to cancel the party. "That's awful," she sympathized. "Can't they stay somewhere else temporarily?" "Apparently not. Mom made it clear this was my family duty." "How long will they be there?" "Jessica says 3 months, but..." I trailed off, already suspecting it would be longer. The first week was what I told myself was an adjustment period. The second week would be better once everyone found their rhythm. But as days turned into weeks, the situation only deteriorated. Luna had a habit of going through my art books without asking, leaving sticky fingerprints on pages that featured architectural photography I'd collected for inspiration. River seemed to believe every surface in my house was his personal canvas. Marcus set up his recording equipment in my basement and began composing at all hours, the sound of drums and electric guitar filtering through my carefully soundproofed home office. Most frustrating of all, Jessica and Marcus made exactly zero progress on finding their own place. When I asked about their apartment search during week 3, Jessica waved vaguely about waiting for the right opportunity and not wanting to rush into anything unsuitable for the children. My work began to suffer. Client video calls were interrupted by the sound of children arguing or Marcus testing his guitar amplifier. My carefully organized project files were moved or misplaced when Jessica decided to help by tidying my office. One morning, I discovered Luna had used my presentation boards as drawing paper, covering architectural sketches with rainbow unicorns. "Jessica, this has to stop," I confronted her after finding my expensive architectural pencils broken and scattered across the living room floor. "The kids need boundaries, and you and Marcus need to be actively searching for your own place." "We're looking," she insisted, but I'd seen no evidence of apartment hunting websites on their laptops, no phone calls to landlords, no visits to potential rentals. "It's just really competitive out there right now. With our situation, we need to be selective." "When exactly will that be?" I pressed. She gave me that artistic shrug I'd seen my entire life. "These things take time. You can't rush the universe." My parents were no help when I called to express my frustration. Every complaint was met with reminders about family loyalty and how the children needed stability. When I pointed out that Marcus spent most days working on his music instead of job hunting, Mom defended him. "He's an artist, Maya. He needs to maintain his creative practice during this stressful time." The situation reached a breaking point when I returned from a 3-day business trip to Portland to find my home office had been completely transformed. My drafting table was pushed against the wall, my filing cabinets had been moved to the garage, and a full recording studio had been set up in the space where I conducted client meetings. "Where are my project files?" I demanded when Marcus finally emerged from the kitchen. "Oh, Jessica organized all that stuff. She put most of it in storage boxes in the garage." The kids really needed a creative space for rainy days, and your office has the best natural light in the house. Marcus, that room is off limits. I need it for my work. He had the audacity to look annoyed. You're hardly ever here anyway. You work late most nights, and you were gone for 3 days. The kids need space to express themselves, you know. That night, I overheard a phone conversation between Jessica and Mom that made my blood run cold. Yeah, she's getting upset about the office thing, Jessica was saying, but she'll get over it. I think we should start talking about a more permanent arrangement. The rental market is absolutely insane right now, and with my credit situation, besides, the kids are finally settled in their new schools, and changing districts again would be really disruptive. Mom's response was muffled, but Jessica's reply was crystal clear. 6 months minimum, maybe through the end of the school year. She can definitely afford it. Did you see her promotion announcement on LinkedIn? Senior architect now, and you should see the house she's created. She's obviously doing really well financially. I stood frozen in my hallway, the realization crashing over me like ice water. This was never meant to be temporary. Jessica had no intention of leaving, and my parents were enabling her every step of the way. I was being used plain and simple. The next morning, I discovered the final straw. While searching for my missing project files, I found that Jessica had been through my personal financial documents. Bank statements were out of order, and my mortgage paperwork had been moved from its usual place in my desk drawer. When confronted, she didn't even deny it. I was just curious about your interest rate, she said casually, as if snooping through my private papers was perfectly normal. Marcus and I were thinking about eventually buying a place, and I wanted to see what kind of rates people with good credit get. Eventually? I repeated. I thought the plan was for you to find a rental immediately. She shrugged again, that infuriating gesture I'd grown to hate. Well, you know, with the market the way it is, maybe buying makes more sense in the long run. I called for an emergency family meeting that evening, determined to set things straight once and for all. We gathered in my living room so my family could see firsthand how crowded and chaotic the situation had become. This isn't working, I stated firmly. Jessica and Marcus haven't made any genuine progress toward finding their own place. My work is suffering, and my space has been completely taken over. Instead of support, I was met with a wall of resistance. The children seem perfectly happy here, Mom observed, willfully ignoring the chaos and my obvious stress. Jessica needs more time, Dad added. Good housing doesn't appear overnight. Maybe, David suggested with false innocence, it would be easier if you found a smaller place for yourself. Something closer to your office, since you spend so much time there anyway. I stared at him, stunned. You want me to move out of my own house? It makes the most practical sense, Mom agreed readily. Jessica needs a space for the children, and you're just one person. Besides, you could probably afford something really nice downtown. In that moment, looking at their expectant faces, the truth hit me with devastating clarity. To my family, I wasn't a person with needs, boundaries, and feelings. I was a resource to be tapped whenever Jessica's poor decisions created a crisis. My success wasn't something to celebrate, it was something to exploit. I'd never been a beloved daughter or sister to them. I'd been a safety net, an insurance policy, a backup plan for their golden child. And I was done with it. The realization that my family saw me as nothing more than a convenient solution to Jessica's problems fundamentally changed something inside me. Still, I tried one last time to salvage the situation by setting clear, non-negotiable deadlines. You have exactly 4 weeks to find jobs and secure your own apartment, I told Jessica and Marcus firmly. I'll help with the security deposit if needed, but this arrangement ends on December 31st. No exceptions. Jessica nodded with what appeared to be sincerity. Absolutely. We really appreciate everything you've done. For exactly 2 days, she made a show of browsing apartment listings on her laptop. By day 3, she was back to her pottery wheel, creating what she called healing art to process the stress of their situation. I was working late at the office one Friday, the only place I could concentrate anymore, when my phone buzzed with a text from my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. Is your sister having a party? Lots of noise and cars on the street. Thought you should know. My stomach dropped. I hadn't authorized any gathering. Racing home, I walked into what could only be described as a full-blown house party. At least 20 people I'd never met were scattered throughout my home, music blasted from speakers I didn't recognize, and the distinct smell of marijuana hung in the air despite my strict no-smoking policy. There in the center of it all was Jessica, laughing with a wine glass in hand as if she owned the place, while Marcus played guitar in the corner surrounded by an audience of admirers. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice barely audible over the music. Jessica spotted me and beamed. "Maya, perfect timing. Come meet some of our friends from the art community. We're having a little gathering to celebrate Marcus's new song." I stared at the scene in disbelief. Someone had spilled red wine on my cream-colored rug. My carefully arranged bookshelf had been cleared to make room for bottles of alcohol. Most horrifying of all, a woman I didn't know was rummaging through my wine refrigerator, pulling out a bottle of 2015 Burgundy I'd been saving for a special occasion. "That's a $400 bottle of wine," I said, snatching it from her hands. The woman looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Jessica said to help ourselves. I turned to my sister, fury building like a pressure cooker. "Everyone needs to leave. Now." Jessica rolled her eyes. "Don't be such a buzzkill, Maya. It's just a little creative gathering. In my home, with my things, without my permission." She laughed, addressing her friends with theatrical exasperation. "See what I mean? Always so uptight about her precious possessions." Something snapped inside me. "Out!" I shouted loud enough that the music seemed to dim in comparison. "Everyone who doesn't live here, get out right now." The party guests, sensing real anger, began shuffling awkwardly toward the door. Jessica watched them go with an expression of amused embarrassment, as if I were a child throwing an unreasonable tantrum. When the last stranger had left, I confronted her. "This is completely unacceptable. You can't just take over my home like this." "Technically, it's our home now," she replied with maddening casualness. "Mom said we're family and family shares." "I don't care what Mom said. This is my house. My name is on the mortgage. I make the rules." Jessica's amusement faded, replaced by the cold look she got whenever anyone challenged her sense of entitlement. "Look, I get that you're stressed about work or whatever, but you need to relax. The kids and I need space to live and breathe, not just exist in your perfect little museum. If you want space, get your own place." That was the deal. "The deal," she sneered, "was family helping family. But I guess your precious career and expensive wine collection matter more than your own niece and nephew having a stable home." "Don't you dare use the kids as shields," I shot back. "This isn't about them. It's about you taking advantage, like you always have." Her face darkened. "You know what? You don't even need this place. You're always working. Must be nice having nothing in your life but a job and possessions no one's allowed to touch." The cruelty of her words hit like a physical blow. Before I could respond, my phone rang, Mom's name flashing on the screen as if summoned by our argument. "Jessica just called me," she began without preamble when I answered. "She says you're threatening to throw them out over a little get-together." I laughed bitterly. A little get-together? There were strangers in my home, going through my things, smoking marijuana in my living room. "Don't be so dramatic," Mom dismissed. "She's your sister, not some tenant. Family doesn't have boundaries like that. Family shouldn't take advantage either, but here we are. I'm disappointed in you, Maya. I thought we raised you with better values than this." The irony was staggering. Better values than what? Than expecting basic respect in my own home? Than wanting my sister to take responsibility for once in her life? She's going through a difficult time. She's always going through a difficult time. I exploded. And somehow it's always my job to fix it. Well, I'm done. "So, you'll just put your sister and her children out on the street? Is that the kind of person you are?" Her words were designed to wound, to press on the lifetime of conditioning that had taught me my needs came last. But something had changed in me. The spell was broken. "I guess we'll find out," I said quietly and hung up. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house that had once been my sanctuary now felt like a prison. Every corner held evidence of the invasion: toys underfoot, dishes in the sink, the lingering smell of marijuana and spilled wine. At 2 a.m., I called Rachel, my college roommate and the one person who had always seen through my family's dysfunction. "They've completely taken over," I told her, voice breaking. "And now they're making me feel like I'm the villain for wanting my home back." "Because that's how they've always operated," Rachel said firmly. "They take, and when you finally say enough, they act like you're the problem." "Mom suggested I should find my own place," I admitted. "Like I should be the one to leave my own home." "And are you considering it?" she asked carefully. The question hung in the air.
Was I?
Had I been so thoroughly conditioned to accommodate Jessica that I was actually contemplating giving up my home? "No," I said finally, the word feeling like freedom. "No, I'm not." "Good," Rachel said. "Because I think it's time you put yourself first for once. They're counting on you bending like you always have." What would happen if you didn't? What would happen indeed? As dawn broke, I lay awake, a plan forming in my mind. It wasn't about revenge, though Jessica might see it that way. It was about reclaiming my life, my space, and my self-respect. It was about finally breaking the pattern that had defined our family dynamic for decades. Jessica and my parents had pushed me to a breaking point, but in doing so, they'd inadvertently liberated me from the obligation to keep sacrificing for someone who would never appreciate it. They'd shown their true colors so clearly that I could no longer pretend this was about family love or temporary hardship. And with that clarity came a strange sense of peace. For the first time in my adult life, I knew exactly what I needed to do, not what would please my family or minimize conflict, but what was right for me. The decision made, I finally drifted off to sleep, more certain than I'd ever been. The next morning, I woke with crystal clear purpose. Jessica and the kids had plans to visit Marcus's parents in Tacoma for the day, a small mercy that would give me the privacy I needed. As soon as they left, I pulled out my phone and made the first of several crucial calls. "Maya," answered Jennifer, my real estate agent and former classmate from architecture school. "How's that beautiful house treating you?" "That's actually why I'm calling," I said. "I need to sell. How quickly can we list?" Jennifer, ever the professional, didn't miss a beat. "Market's incredibly hot right now. We could have it listed by Wednesday if you're serious." "But what brought this on?" "I thought you were planning that big housewarming party." I gave her a condensed version of recent events. Wow," she responded. "Are you absolutely sure about this?" "I'm sure," I said firmly. "And Jennifer, I need this handled with complete discretion until the sign goes up." Next, I called my bank. The $4,500 I'd put down for the housewarming party was substantial, but the event coordinator was understanding when I explained I had a family emergency. She agreed to process a full refund minus a modest cancellation fee. With those calls made, I opened my laptop and began searching for short-term furnished rentals. I needed somewhere comfortable but flexible, a place to land while I figured out my next move. Within 2 hours, I'd scheduled viewings for 3 promising options. The first 2 apartments were nice, but uninspiring. The third, however, felt like a sign from the universe. A stunning corner unit in a modern building with floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the Space Needle, and most importantly, 24-hour security. The 6-month lease was perfect, and I signed the paperwork on the spot. Back at my house, I began the emotional process of separating my life from the chaos Jessica had brought. I created a detailed inventory of my most valuable possessions, my architectural drawings, my collection of design books, my grandmother's jewelry, and my professional equipment. Anything irreplaceable or particularly meaningful would come with me. I carefully packed my computer, external drives containing years of architectural projects, and my professional portfolio. My diplomas and awards came down from the walls and went into protective cases. I gathered all my important documents, passport, birth certificate, property records, financial statements, and secured them in a fireproof safe. The more personal items were harder to pack. Photographs from college, the pottery vase I'd made in a ceramics class, the first architectural model I'd ever built. As I wrapped each piece carefully in bubble wrap, I felt a complex mix of sadness and relief. This house had been my pride and joy, but it had been violated in a way that made staying feel impossible. I called the utility companies one by one, arranging to have all services transferred out of my name effective the following Monday. Electricity, water, gas, internet, cable, everything would continue for a brief grace period under emergency provisions, but would require new accounts within days if Jessica wanted to maintain them. Throughout the afternoon, I methodically packed my life into suitcases and boxes, taking only what truly mattered. The furniture could stay. Most of it had been chosen to complement the house's craftsman architecture anyway. The expensive pots and pans, the high-end coffee maker, the sound system, all could remain as part of Jessica's education in consequences. As evening approached, I called Rachel. "It's done," I told her. "I've signed a lease on a new place, and the house will be listed tomorrow." "How do you feel?" she asked. I considered the question carefully. "Free," I finally said. Like I've finally stopped carrying something heavy that was never mine to carry in the first place. "When are you telling them?" "I'm not," I replied. "I'm leaving a letter. Jessica gets back tomorrow evening. By then, I'll be gone." "You don't think you should tell them face to face?"
"Why?"
"So they can manipulate me into changing my mind? So Mom can guilt-trip me and Jessica can make me feel responsible for her poor choices?"
"No."
"I've made my decision. Do you need help moving your things?" "Yes, please. Can you come over early tomorrow? I want to be completely out before they return." The next morning dawned crisp and clear, a perfect December day for new beginnings. Rachel arrived at 7 a.m. with coffee and determination. Together, we loaded my car and her SUV with the carefully packed boxes and suitcases that represented my new, simplified life. As Rachel carried the last box out, I stood in the center of what had been my sanctuary. The space still held traces of my careful decorating and restoration work, but it was now overlaid with Jessica's careless occupation. Toys scattered across the refinished hardwood floors, dishes in the sink I'd painstakingly selected, guitar equipment in the corner where my reading chair used to be. I placed the letter I'd written on the kitchen counter, held down by my spare set of keys. It was neither angry nor vindictive, simply factual. "Jessica, I've moved out and listed the house for sale. My attorney will contact you regarding the closing process once we have a buyer. All utilities have been transferred out of my name, so you'll need to establish your own accounts immediately if you want to continue having services. This isn't a sudden decision, but the culmination of a lifetime of patterns that are no longer sustainable for me. I wish you and the children well, but I need to prioritize my own well-being now. The furniture and household items remain for your use until the house sells. Please treat them with respect. Maya." Simple.
"Direct."
Final. As I turned to leave, Jennifer texted to confirm the "for sale" sign would be installed that afternoon. Perfect timing. I took one last look around, not at what I was leaving behind, but at what I was walking away from. The expectation that my needs would always come last. The assumption that my success was a resource to be tapped whenever Jessica made poor retry. This response paused because Claude reached its max length for a message. Hit continue to nudge Claude along to continue. Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses. As I drove away from my beautiful craftsman house for the last time, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders that I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. The December sun caught the windows of my new building as I pulled into the secure parking garage, and for the first time in months, I smiled genuinely. My new apartment was everything my old house wasn't: compact, manageable, and entirely mine. No toys underfoot, no mysterious stains on the furniture, no amplifiers drowning out my client calls. Just clean lines, city views, and blessed silence. The first call came 3 hours later. Jessica's name flashed on my phone screen, and I let it go to voicemail. Then came Dad's call, Mom's, David's, and another from Jessica. I silenced my phone and focused on unpacking my carefully chosen possessions in my new space. When I finally listened to the messages that evening, the progression was predictable. Jessica's first voicemail was confused. "Maya, where are you?" There's a for sale sign on the lawn and some weird letter on the counter. Call me back. The second was angry. I can't believe you'd do something this sneaky. Mom is right. You've become completely selfish. How could you abandon your own family like this? Dad's message was disappointed. Maya, we need to talk. This isn't how family handles disagreements. Come home, so we can work this out. Mom's was guilt-laden. I'm ashamed of you, Maya. Those poor children don't understand why their aunt suddenly doesn't want them anymore. Jessica is devastated. David's was accusatory. Real mature, Maya. Running away instead of having a conversation like an adult. Jessica's crying. The kids are confused, and you're nowhere to be found. Jessica's final message was desperate. Maya, please. We can work this out. I know I made mistakes, but don't punish the kids for my problems. They love this house, and they need stability. You know I can't afford anywhere else right now. I deleted each message without responding. The next few days brought a barrage of texts, emails, and calls that I systematically ignored. My parents even showed up at my office, forcing Diana to diplomatically explain that I was unavailable. When Mom tried to guilt-trip Diana about family responsibilities, my mentor's response was perfect. Maya is one of our most valued architects. Whatever personal situation she's handling, we support her completely. A week passed before I finally answered one of Jessica's calls. Maya, thank God, she breathed. We need to talk. This whole thing has gotten out of hand. I think it's been handled quite appropriately, I replied calmly. The utilities were shut off yesterday. The kids are scared, and Marcus can't get his music equipment working without electricity. You can't just leave us like this. I left very clear instructions about transferring the utilities to your name. That's what adults do when they live somewhere. They take responsibility for basic services. You know we can't afford deposits and connection fees right now. Then you should have thought of that before having an unauthorized party in my home and treating my possessions like they belong to you. Jessica's voice turned sharp. So, this is about your precious things being touched? That's what's more important than family. This is about respect, I said firmly. Something you've never shown me, and something I'm no longer willing to live without. Where are we supposed to go? You're literally making us homeless. You were already homeless when you moved in with me. I was never a permanent solution. I was a temporary favor that you turned into an entitlement. Mom says you've changed. That success has made you cold. I laughed, surprising myself with the sound. Success didn't make me cold, Jessica. It made me realize I deserved better than being everyone's backup plan. The kids keep asking where Aunt Maya went. What am I supposed to tell them? For the first time, her words stung. Luna and River were innocent in all this. But I couldn't let guilt over them trap me back into the same patterns. Tell them Aunt Maya loves them, but grown-ups sometimes need to make difficult decisions. Tell them that when you find your own place, I'd love to have them visit. You know that's not possible right now. Then, I guess you need to figure out how to make it possible. The conversation ended with Jessica hanging up on me. 2 weeks later, Jennifer called with excellent news. We have 3 offers, all above asking price. One buyer is willing to close in 30 days with cash. What do you think? Take it, I said without hesitation. Maya, are you sure? This is moving very fast. I've never been more sure of anything. The closing process was a whirlwind of paperwork and legal details, but Jennifer and my attorney handled most of it. Jessica made several attempts to contact me during this period, her messages growing increasingly desperate as the reality of the situation sank in. The final message I received from her was different, smaller, more honest. I know you probably won't respond to this, but I wanted you to know that Marcus and I are staying with his parents in Tacoma for now. The kids are enrolled in school there. I got a job at an art supply store and Marcus is teaching guitar lessons. I'm sorry about how everything happened. I didn't realize. I never thought about what this was costing you. I hope someday you can forgive me. I stared at that message for a long time before deleting it. The house sold on February 15th, exactly when Jessica was supposed to have moved out voluntarily. I used part of the proceeds to purchase my apartment outright, invested the rest, and treated myself to a long weekend in Vancouver to celebrate. When I returned to work after that trip, Diana knocked on my office door. "You look different," she observed. "Different how?" "Lighter. More yourself, if that makes sense." It did make sense. For the first time in my adult life, my success felt entirely my own. My space was my own. My decisions were my own. 6 months later, I received an unexpected text from David. "Jessica told me what really happened. I owe you an apology. Want to get coffee sometime?" We met at a quiet cafe in Capitol Hill, where David looked genuinely remorseful. "I didn't understand how bad it had gotten," he admitted. "I thought you were just being dramatic about sharing space. You thought I should move out of my own house so Jessica could stay." I reminded him.
He winced.
"Yeah, that was really messed up. I was so used to you fixing everything that I couldn't see how unfair we were being." "Used to me fixing everything?"
Come on, Maya.
"You know what I mean. Whenever Jessica got in trouble, we all just assumed you'd handle it. When I needed help with my student loans, when Mom and Dad needed advice about their retirement planning, when Jessica needed money for her art supplies, we always came to you." I stir my coffee, processing this admission. "And now I'm learning to handle my own problems. It's harder, but it's better. Jessica is too, actually. She seems more responsible now. Like having to figure things out herself forced her to grow up." "How are Luna and River?" "They're good. They miss you, but they're adjusting well to Tacoma. Jessica's working full-time for the first time in years, and Marcus is building up his teaching clientele. They're talking about getting their own apartment in the spring." "That's good to hear." David studied my face. "Do you miss us?" "Miss being involved." I considered the question honestly. I miss the kids. I miss the idea of having a close family. But I don't miss the drama, the constant crises, or feeling like my worth was measured by what I could provide. "Do you think, could there be a different way? For us to be family without all that?" "I don't know," I said truthfully. "That would require everyone to change, not just me. And it would require acknowledging that the old way was harmful." David nodded slowly. "For what it's worth, I think Mom and Dad are starting to realize that too. They keep asking why you never call anymore, and I've been trying to explain that you don't owe us access to your life just because we're related." "How's that going over?" "About as well as you'd expect. But I think they're starting to understand that they lost you by taking you for granted." We finished our coffee with tentative plans to meet again. It wasn't reconciliation exactly, but it was a door left slightly ajar. That evening, I stood on my apartment balcony watching the sun set behind the Space Needle. The city stretched out below me, full of possibilities and free from the weight of other people's expectations. My phone buzzed with a text from a colleague about a new sustainable housing project that needed a lead architect. I smiled as I typed back my interest. For the first time in my life, I was writing my own story, not as the responsible middle child, not as the family's emergency fund, not as someone defined by her willingness to sacrifice for others. Just as Maya Chun, senior architect, woman who'd learned that the most important thing you can build is boundaries, and the most valuable thing you can own is your own life. I was finally completely, gloriously free. And it felt like coming home.